doing? Excuse me, Kinesiology 223. This is now chapter 10. Chapter 10 speaks specifically regarding leadership, and leadership kind of defined as a social process, the difference between leaders and managers, and methods for choosing different leaders. And that's kind of a little bit of a misnomer itself. But I will say this, there have been an absolute mountain of books written regarding the concept of leadership, whether it's from leadership on SEAL Team 6 to leadership on how to run Chrysler. This is decades ago. I referenced in another presentation, Good to Great by Collins. That's a well-known book regarding leadership. I have a bookcase behind me. Well, you can't see it. I got a bookcase behind me that's loaded with a bunch of books regarding leadership, etc., management, etc. But you will not be at a loss for finding material on this topic if you decide to go source out information regarding leadership. But let's jump into specifically what the book speaks about regarding leadership and management as well. So after reading this chapter, here's what you should be doing. Define leadership and the difference between leaders and managers. Trait, behavioral, situational, interactional approaches to studying leadership. Cognitive mediational model of leadership, meaning like you mediate. Explain the multidimensional role of sport leadership, transformational, servant, authentic models of sport leadership, which I found that area to be kind of interesting. I'll get into that when we get there. And then just a couple other things regarding leadership in sports settings. So with this, leadership is often viewed as a role. I would contest that it's a little bit more than that. It's kind of a mindset. You can be a leader in a company and be a CEO, but you have to have a mindset in terms of how you wrap yourself around all the different moving parts within an organization. But specifically, those moving parts are inclusive of the people in the organization. And leaders, they're kind of situational, time and place, STP, dependent. If you have an organization that's in a turnaround phase or a change agent phase, startup phase, those are different environments that require a different skill set to be able to run them. And when you look at different leadership styles and different qualities of leaders, one might not fit into a particular type of role. It might be a startup or something along those lines, whereas the best of fit might be to be a change agent. You just don't know. But the way the book defines this is it's the process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. It typically involves facilitating motivation in others, where the leader focuses on getting individuals to collaborate in pursuit of a common goal. I would contest that the people who are the visionaries, the people who are able to think at 30,000 feet big picture, those are your CEOs, your CFOs, your chief marketing officers. If anybody has like a C in front of their name, those folks think big picture, and those are the folks that are leaders. But that doesn't mean you as a manager can't have leadership qualities built into how you interact day to day. Broad base, if you were to take and categorize everybody in an organization, you're going to have doer, manager, leader. The folks who are the doer are the people who are like at the register, ringing people up, cleaning the tables, cooking in the back. They do stuff day to day. Managers oversee those people and processes, and the leaders are the ones who think big picture. So, the doers would be the folks who are cooking the burrito at the Chipotle and putting it together and then ringing it up. The manager is the one who oversees the facility, handles the day-to-day operations of the facility. There'll be some interaction with the employees, of course. And the leaders are the ones who are like in the executive corner office and the ones who are thinking in terms of growth strategies, ways to implement strategies that will increase heightened awareness regarding a particular product or brand. And, they're the ones that have the flow through down to the folks who are the manager and doers. So you got to understand that these kind of work together, but in terms of hierarchical thinking, the doers are just that. They're doing stuff. They're doing the day-to-day operations within the context of the business. The managers are managing that day-to-day operations, whether it's the financial component, unlocking the doors, turning on the stoves, whatever that may be, ordering the raw goods to cook. And the leaders are the one that provide the vision, the overall driving vision for an organization. And where it becomes the book defines the main differences. You know, managers generally concerned with the planning, organizing, scheduling, budgeting, staffing, recruiting. And leaders might do these things, but the leaders don't do so at the granular level like you see it as a manager. Whereas your leaders, you know, they try to provide the resources and support to get the job done. And I think that is really selling that concept short, you know, because leaders are the ones that have to have the vision to be able to create that driving message and vision that we're all marching towards. In the athletic environment, your leader might be the director of athletics who puts in place the concept that, okay, I want all my athletes to win, or I want all my coaches, excuse me, to win 2/3 of the games, 3/4 of their games at home, and half of their games while they're away. So they have a 66% win-loss record overall. Well, that's a vision, you know, and the vision itself can also include, I would like to have for this department, we want the ability to create a heightened sense of market awareness and be able to have a heightened or increased amount of people who come through the turnstiles to watch our wrestling meets, basketball games, baseball games. And so they come up with a way to drive that and drive those visions. Whereas the managers in this example, in terms of like college athletics, would probably be your coaches. They're the ones, you can make the argument, you might have some people who are like on the operational side in an athletic department where you'll have somebody who oversees the day-to-day operations of the football team, the travel of the football team, underneath the athletic director, underneath the silo of football. But in general, if you look at it in terms of your athletic director is driving the vision, your coaches are the ones implementing the vision. And that's really the differentiator. It's the one who creates the vision and the other who implements the vision. With two methods for choosing leaders, and I'm kind of meh on this, but prescribed leaders. Leaders and coaches are usually appointed by somebody in authority. Like the owners will bring in a new coach for a football team, as we just saw here in Chicago. You know, those are prescribed leaders, and you have to work under the presumption that your prescribed leaders have the hard skills, the background, experience, etc., necessary to be able to do the job, and they also have the soft skills to be able to implement the context of what their vision is to do the job. So you kind of have to look at this in terms of your leaders have to have hard skills and soft skills to make all of this happen. Now, the other example they give are emergent leaders, and these are leaders who kind of rise up through the ranks organically. And I will say this, you know, it used to be years ago where somebody would get in with a company, they'd start in the mailroom and they'd work forever for a company, and they'd end up running the dang thing. Now, and I have a former client of mine who was a senior executive with Walgreens here in Chicago. And he got out of his role. He took a little time off. We were just working out one day. I'm like, well, what do you think? What are you going to do? You know, because he had spent his entire career with Walgreens. We're talking 20-something years. He goes, I'm going to start moving around like a millennial. No offense to millennials. But he's like, I'm going to start moving around like a millennial. I'm going to work 2 years in one job, move to another job, work 2 years there, work a year, another one, and really work on building up my skill as well as my hard skills and soft skills to be able to be on the executive team, to be a CEO of a company. He goes, to go in and sit and grow organically, he goes, forget it. So he was turning away from the emergent leader side, understanding he had spent an entire career with Walgreens and he was done with them. And he moved on and he looked at it in terms of he wanted to be more in a prescribed leader type of environment where he was being placed in different roles. Executive vice president, chief marketing officer to operational officer to CEO to president of a company, right? So that's your difference between emergent and prescribed leaders. They list 4 main approaches here, and you have trait approach with leaders, and they're born with certain personality characteristics that make it likely they'll become a leader. Behavioral approach, anyone can become a leader by emulating what successful leaders do. Then they get into situational approach. It's the belief that leader characteristics are not as important as originally thought. They're more situational in nature, like I alluded to earlier. We'll have somebody who will be a an executive with a startup, an executive with a turnaround, an executive with a late stage company. Situational, right? Different situations, different leaders. And then you have an interactional approach where it's the interaction of traits and behaviors of a leader in a situational context, which is probably the most accurate in terms of how this works in placing people into leadership roles. So from a non-sports setting, most leaders fall into two categories, right? Your like consideration or initiating structure. And the way the book defines this is consideration refers to friendship, mutual trust, respect, and warmth between a leader and subordinates. And also in this context, they describe initiating structure refers to setting of rules and regulations, channels and communication, procedural method, and well-defined patterns of the organization to achieve goals and objectives. I would say of these two, you have the soft skills of interaction with the people, and then the hard skills of knowing how to manage the business. In a sports setting, the study of leadership in a sport and exercise setting, you look at like leaderships in a class where one person's teaching the class, that's a leader, right? That person's leading the class. In terms of sports, you have the coaches are leaders of a team, and I would contest that within the sport environment, the athletic director is the leader of the entire sports or athletic department. So they put together several bullet points, and it starts on page 226 regarding the ability of leadership styles to adapt to a situation, which I agree to 100%, or agree with 100%. And it kind of brings into comparison now of like relationship-oriented leader and task-oriented leader, but there's no one set of characteristics that ensure successful leadership. It's not based solely on personality traits, and effective leaders, leadership styles or behaviors fit specific situation and the athletes involved in that situation. Leadership styles can be changed. Yep, they can evolve. And you look at this now when you get into relationship-oriented leader, you're developing interpersonal relationships, whereas task-oriented, where you're working on getting a task done and trying to meet objectives. So it's a little bit different, right, in terms of the skills. You have the soft skills and the hard skills. Effectiveness of leadership depends upon the skill of the athletes, the level of competition, and the resources available. And I would say the effectiveness also depends upon the ability of the leader to be able to deliver the message and the urgency of implementation of a strategy, concept, or a culture. With the contingency model of leadership, I'm okay with this, but it depends equally on a style of leadership style, interacting with the group, and the favorableness of the situation. So it's kind of situation, time, place, as well as who you're working with. And it's also on the skill set of a leader, which I'm with. You would look at this, you go, okay, yeah, your highly skilled players in a skilled environment are very much task-oriented, and coaches will have a different type of working relationship with those athletes than they will with less skilled players, where you need constant instruction, constant feedback. So it just depends. Depends who's in front of you. I thought this was a really good overview, and I would urge you to take a little time and go ahead and read through some of this and look at how like the influence of leadership can spill over, and the influence and weight of like leadership from a peer can spill over into the environment when you're talking about athletics. All right, guys, moving on to the next one.